I am a fairly new dungeon master, currently running a module where the party searches through ancient ruins of an ancient, advanced race that went extinct long ago. Some people might know what module I'm talking about. The point is that these ancient people had a lot of constructs that resist non-magical damage. The other thing is that I'm running a campaign for 6 people, when the campaign is normally meant for 4 players. So I figured, hey, it wouldn't be that bad if I bumped the number of enemies. Thing is that my party consists of a monk, paladin, rogue, ranger, cleric, and druid, and neither the cleric nor the druid focus on damage. They prioritize healing instead. So the only person who was bypassing resistances was the monk, thanks to key-empowered strikes. As a result, the fairly minor encounter lasted 3 hours, taking up basically all of our session time. It was tense at first, but after a point, it just started to drag on, especially when the party insisted on killing some constructs that actually backed away from the combat. My way of saying, hey, I didn't balance this encounter well, let's just get it over with. Ultimate conclusion I learned is be careful with enemies that resist non-magical attacks, at least at this somewhat early level, because it also became obvious this module was designed with the assumption that you'd have spellcasters that deal damage. Whew, I totally get this. You know, at the end of the day, is it a horror story? Yeah, but hey, you learn from it, and who hasn't had a rough D&D combat every once in a while? Besides, a 3-hour slog of a combat is nothing compared to what we're about to see. Just you wait. Hi, I've been watching your videos, and I was thinking of sending you a horror story for a while, thank you by the way, since I have a lot of them, but this one is the one that finally motivated me to tell you that something happened last week. Sorry in advance for my English, it's not my native language, but I'll try my best to explain myself. I play a human blood hunter, Order of the Lycan, a girl from a noble family of monster hunters, and she's competing against her older brothers in a challenge. The best hunter will win the family heritage, kind of like Neil Gaiman's Stardust meets Castlevania. In one of our sessions, I found a whip that had a connection with my family that I couldn't quite figure out, but I assumed that connection existed because it started talking to me, and it knew my family name. The whip is a sentient weapon that apparently has a hunger for extreme emotions, and it promised me to give me power and help me defeat my brothers if I gave it some kind of emotion, such as love, anger, fear, suffering, etc. Of course, I happily accepted the offer. Sounds legit, and not creepy or dangerous at all. 2 weeks ago, the DM narrated, "Everyone has a good sleep, except you. The next morning, you wake up, and when you see yourself in the mirror, you're completely covered in blood, and it's not yours." And that's the end of the session. Everyone was shocked with that cliffhanger, me the most, and I had to wait a week to know what the heck happened. I spent the whole week thinking, maybe I lost control of myself and turned into a hybrid form. But why? It never happened before. Did I hunt an animal? Did I kill somebody? I was excited because I love drama and dark stuff. I mean, I'm playing a blood hunter. Of course, I have a little edginess in me, but not gonna lie, I was a little worried too because of something that happened a while ago. I'm not gonna tell you everything because it's another story that needs another post on its own, but for context, I went to a Duke's party that wasn't invited to, and while there, I was unwillingly involved in the murder of a very important noble lady, and I was extorted by an NPC that murdered her in front of me so I wouldn't talk about it. When I told the party what happened, because I, as my character and also as a player, I was afraid, well, they didn't like that at all, and there was a big fight between us. So tense that we couldn't tell if it was our characters or the players arguing. Wait, you told them about the murderer? And they got mad at you for it?
Gunnar Gunnarsson? Yeah, there has been another murder.
Yeah, well, that's your fault, bitch. One of them even said that they were thinking of leaving the party, and I felt so guilty that I almost begged them to stay. Later, out of character, I asked the group and the dungeon master how to avoid conflicts over someone leaving the party because I felt really bad about the whole thing. So yeah, it was ugly, and this covered in blood situation was giving me similar vibes, so I was concerned. A week passed, and in the next session, we discovered what happened. My whip, not having enough extreme emotions lately, took complete control of me and made me murder a whole family. 4 innocent people that I don't even know. Also, we found out that I didn't even turn into a hybrid form, but I was myself as a human attacking with the whip itself. During the session, because of a stealth roll that I failed, someone saw me while I was going to clean myself off the blood, so they told the guards that are now investigating the case. Well, screw me, I guess. Luckily, I somehow wasn't arrested thanks to the persuasion of my party, but of course, I had to explain what this was all about. I didn't want to talk about the whip, so I told them that maybe it was something that my family knew about, a lycanthropy effect that I didn't know about because I was fairly new to all this, so we could reach my brothers and ask them. Even though they believed me, they were also a little concerned. Especially one of them, because that happened in her town, her home, and now we had to leave early because of this, and who knows if it would be safe for us to return. She even said to me that she didn't fully trust that I could control myself and wouldn't kill more people in the future, so she didn't know if she wanted me to be in the party anymore, which is completely fair considering the circumstances. The rest of the party agreed that I needed surveillance, so now they'll watch over me and they'll keep my weapon until it's necessary. It was intense and was very similar to the other argument that we had, if not worse, because this time we were discussing if I had to leave the party. I felt horrible. When we finished the session, out of character, we had a talk, and the group agreed that they didn't like the whole murdering thing. They weren't comfortable with killing innocent people just because, especially because they couldn't do anything to stop it, and even said that if they were me, they'd be pissed because I didn't have a choice. I didn't have control over the situation, and it felt wrong. Also, they did what they could to have the discussion not blame me entirely because it was unfair, and the one that said we should consider kicking me out apologized to me for that, but the situation was very complicated for her and her character, which I understand, and I said it was okay. And of course, I completely agree with them on everything, telling them that I felt helpless and guilty when it wasn't even my fault, and it would be better if only the DM talked to me about this in advance and later with the rest of the group, because this affected everyone. Our DM was very sorry and regretted everything. He's a really good guy, and he usually is very careful with these kind of things, but this time, he cared more about the shock value and didn't think if it was actually, safe for us. He apologized, and everyone said it was fine. People mess up sometimes. The important thing is to learn from these kind of situations. Then he said it would be a retcon, and we discussed what that would do as a group. I felt much better then, and I understand better than before the importance of communication in-game. A horror story, yes, but one with a good ending. Thank you for reading. It turned out longer than I planned, but I needed to get this off my chest, and I think there's a lesson in the story that needs to be heard. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I did enjoy that. I love frightening my party with a big shock and awe surprise as much as the next guy, but you need to make sure that it's something that the players actually want. And most importantly, you need to make sure that the surprise isn't taking away their agency. In this case, it's not like the Dungeon Master surprised the party with some kind of plot twist from their backstory. Instead, the DM took control of a character in the night and had them murder a bunch of people. The consequences of this don't feel earned. It feels like the party had no control, like the OP said. But at the end of the day, the DM did not get defensive when the party approached them with this concern. The DM instead said sorry. This shows maturity on both ends. The maturity to give the Dungeon Master the soft serve and give them the criticism in a way that isn't too bullheaded, but also the Dungeon Master accepting the criticism, learning from it, and most importantly, saying sorry, which is a step a lot of people try their best to skip for some frickin' reason. Still don't know why the group was mad at the character for reporting a murder. That was weird, but you know what? It doesn't matter. This seems like a great group. If only more people could be like them. I'm remembering the first time I played Dungeons & Dragons, and it reminded me why I no longer touch that system. It was the 4th session of an adventure with level 5 players in Saltmarsh, where, after investigating a smuggler's island, we managed to find the location of some kobolds who were arming themselves to defend against constant attacks from a tribe of Kuatoa fishmen. I almost said Ukatoa. Fun fact. Anyway, so far so good. We had about 3 sessions of just combat, and some of us were starting to miss something other than just fighting, but, it wasn't excessive. Well, when we returned to port, we encountered a Kuatoa ship and started a battle. The fight was tough. They were well equipped, and it took us maybe 2 hours to defeat them. In the end, we won the Kuatoa ship and a list of completely useless treasures, like snow boots, armor that no one could wear, warlock weapons when we had a barbarian, a ranger, a duelist, and a sorcerer, a vial that created smoke, which will be important later, and in general, tools that didn't represent an improvement in our current equipment. Anyway, one of the players made a religion check and realized that the ship was cursed and they would attack us again if we didn't leave it behind. However, neither the player nor the game master informed the rest of us. We wanted to repair the ship and take it with us, so they did indeed attack us again, another ship just like the previous one, with the same enemies but stronger this time, with more ballista and catapults, but at the same time had the same abilities. When we realized, we tried to escape, but nothing we did gave us the opportunity to do so. Even when we rolled excellent rolls above 15, the GM had such high challenge ratings that it was impossible to dodge attacks or gain any distance. At that point, the Game Master told a fellow player that they could escape using the Vial of Smoke, so this player sacrificed the only good item from that session, put it on a raft to provide cover for us, and nothing happened. They just went through the smoke because, according to the Game Master, they are locating the ship using magic, and it was impossible to blind them with smoke. Anyway, after seeing all of that and just getting tired, we decided to fight. The battle lasted over 6 hours. The enemies kept healing endlessly. When we tried to take down the one who was healing, he would just push us away. The only one with area damage was attacked by literally 5 catapults and gigantic crossbow, while the rest of us were pushed off the ship. It took us ages to get back up to fight again. In the end, we had such a miserable time after defeating them. We expected at least some useful rewards from this torment, but nope, it was the same items we already had, and actually even worse ones. After that session, I told them I was going to stop playing, and several of us stopped just right there. You know, Ginny D, big D&D YouTuber, also had a really bad first D&D experience, an experience I covered in last Sunday's video. And in that video, I just straight up said, if Ginny D never wanted to touch Dungeons & Dragons again, I wouldn't blame her, because why would you come back to a hobby that takes up tons of time and is super boring if the Game Master and the rest of the party aren't making it appealing for you? And yeah, I don't blame this guy for not wanting to play the game again. I mean, God, as a resident combat-loving Game Master, this just absolutely sucks. First and foremost, battles should 99% of the time not be over 2 hours, let alone 6. I mean, seriously, this entire video would only be a small fraction of that fight.
You deal 2 damage to the Kuatoa scout. There's only like 20 of them left. You're making good progress so far. Look, I won't question your DMing, but at this rate, this combat is gonna turn out, like, really long. I need to pick up my kids after this, you know? Your pathetic offspring can wait. Besides, I'm not an idiot dungeon master who doesn't balance their combats properly, okay? I made sure that this was a balanced fight. It will be fine.
Actually, let's see how they're doing at the end of the video, just to like check in on their progress, you know? Also, God, there are so many free resources out there for rewarding players. Just look at one of them and you'll have better rewards than this guy. Good Lord. If you ever feel like you're not a good game master, look at this game master and realize you're probably doing okay. For a bit of context, I'm a dungeon master and had picked it up around 2021-ish, and after a few years, my weekly game that I was DMing had fallen through due to players having health issues and just scheduling conflicts. You know how it goes. But the main thing was, I was trying to get into a new group, or do another attempt at DMing. Most of my friends were in a different game, so I decided that I would try making another campaign. This is where I met the package deal. Who are the main aspects of the story? We have Taiga, one member of this package deal, but someone who was genuinely invested in the game and was fun to be around. Zhao, the other member of the package deal, and a man who made me reconsider running the game in the first place. There are other players, but they aren't really all that important. For understanding sake... Wait, oh, I've been drinking too much. For understanding's sake, these two are really good friends, like apparently besties since forever, and always played together as a group, with both of them enjoying chaotic neutral type characters, which was a bit of a warning for me. But I sped past that like a skier, so I rounded up a few more players for a campaign that's meant to be roleplay heavy, with combat being something that can be generally avoided, either with clever negotiation or just clever use of magic. They rolled up a pair of Niflheim twins. I was allowing homebrew with some veto rights, and Taiga made a Way of the Fire dragon character, with Zhao making a Fey ancestry sorcerer. Think Divine Soul, but with the druid spell list instead. The two characters were opposites, and that Taiga's character was a joy to roleplay with, and had a consistent backstory with plenty of tools for me as a dungeon master. Zhao's character's backstory, well, it vaguely existed, and that a lot of the details were ones that were consistent with Taiga's backstory, because the two characters were twins and shared a vague connection of some NPCs in their story. Also, Zhao, really wanted to get elven chainmail for his sorcerer. Now, I tried to get backstory reasons out of both characters. Taiga's had a thing with Archfey, he had an obsession. Zhao just wanted to do things and followed his sister when she said they should go to the prime material plane, as both were raised in the Feywild. It is important to note that Zhao and Taiga had basically become the image of package deal players in my mind, which in that there was a good player and a garbage player. Taiga engaged with the world readily, and I enjoyed playing with her and felt like she was actually interested in playing my game. Zhao, though, rarely roleplayed, and when he did, it was either to do something random or just to be very loud and abrasive, like a merchant who didn't like the rude sorcerer who thought he was better than everyone else, or NPCs who didn't trust him, or player characters who just wanted him to stop shouting. One of my most memorable encounters was with the magic shop owner in one of the first hubs they encountered, Andala, and the fact that she wouldn't budge on most of the prices of her items, because the party was rolling really low and didn't have any good arguments to boot. Zhao started shouting about how he wanted to burn her store to the ground with her in it, and it was really abrasive, and it was very rude to me who had gone through the effort of making the store in the first place. I even had Andala give the party a cool magic battle axe for the party's barbarian, and later a set of magic gauntlets to boot. There was also a case where he was like, "What if he's a male?" in reference to one of my non-binary NPCs, Valsin, and I am forever thankful for my good friend who was in a previous campaign to point out that no, Valsin is NB. What matters in their pants is their shock gauntlet. Which honestly, Zhao being a bit transphobic in relation to an NPC of mine should have been a case where I approached him out of session to ask, what the hell was going on? Another instance was when a murderer had escaped from a local jail. Zhao's character was like, "Sure, guard, I'll help you look for the escapee." And then next sentence, he was like, "I don't care about doing that," to the party artificer, next to the guard, who wasn't pleased that he was just lied to. So he tried to imprison Zhao's character, and Zhao spent at least an hour yelling, "I didn't do anything wrong." Like, no, you very much did. The best way to describe Zhao is that he wanted to do whatever he wanted, and to hell with any consequences, which I could respect in a game that wasn't a roleplay heavy one. It didn't help that during the hours when I was working, he'd randomly message me magic items and basically demand immediate responses on whether or not he could just have them. Just note, I encourage players to DM me. I love it when they approach me out of session to ask about things. It brings a smile to my face, with the exception of when Zhao did it. That just made me exasperated. Also worth mentioning that Taiga and Zhao's characters were raised in the Feywild, so they didn't give out their names, and instead gave out nicknames. Taiga's character went by Lizzie, and Zhao's character coincidentally went by Zhao. This didn't really help that neither character was all that forthcoming with information, the difference being that Taiga eventually started interacting more with the party and revealed information, and had good roleplay moments with them. Zhao didn't. He just kept on being, "Oh, so random," and shoving himself into moments to the point where I think it actually made me really not want to think of the character at all. This also included a dramatic moment in one city where the party was being stalked by some figure. Taiga and an old friend of mine had rolled good in their perceptions and spotted the figure stalking them, then rolled stealth to sneak up to them and get the drop. Zhao then just had his character, who wasn't informed about this mysterious figure at all and was teaching a pet owl how to juggle, just freaking misty-stepped right into the middle of the dramatic moment, especially when I told him flat out he couldn't even see this figure. The figure wasn't pointed out to him, as Taiga had made it a point not to point it out to him, and when asked why, he was like, "I'm Faye. We're all about whimsy," which really wasn't how I was ruling Faye in my setting, because first thing I explained was that he was raised by the Winter Fae, who in my setting are very straightforward people. If A is problem, then B is the solution. Sure, both twins spent time in the summer realm, but he was the twin who spent most of his time in winter. Also, it doesn't matter. Being whimsical doesn't make you clairvoyant. Now, you might be asking, why didn't we get rid of him sooner? Well, it's really simple, because Taiga and Zhao were a package deal, meaning that if Zhao left, Taiga would too, and with her being the one who encouraged me to start the campaign in the first place, it meant I was hesitant to kick him out, even when he gave a good friend of mine, who I had recruited for the game, and myself, stress headaches. Even when he made the barbarian player leave, citing the twins as his reason, even when I started to loathe DMing and running this game. What can I say? I didn't like kicking out players from games, and I have a hard time picking up on red flags, even if Taiga having to constantly apologize for Zhao and the advice of other dungeon masters who I knew, basically telling me that he could have been dropped ages ago on account of the fact that he had so many red flags he could be mistaken for a love interest in a romantic novel. This all changed when something happened. Something that I feel really bad for celebrating, but he finally burned his bridges with Taiga, managed to piss her off enough that she flat out just wanted to not talk to him anymore, which rid me of my biggest worry and removed him of his best shield. So when I paused the campaign to allow me to do some planning, I basically explained to him that he wasn't a good fit for the game, and he had worn out his welcome. He did try bringing up Taiga, but me, not wanting to throw her under the bus, because she just wanted to be rid of him just as much as I did, said, "Funny, you should mention that. I don't care if she leaves." After we got rid of him, I started to enjoy DMing a lot more and felt my game actually get onto something vaguely resembling a track, and I think the rest of the party is happy that they don't need to police the man. Man, I've been in this position where the social web has got you trapped in, and you feel like if you get rid of that one problem player, the whole thing is going to collapse. And maybe it will, but here, ask yourself this question. Is it better to play in a D&D game where you're not having a good time, where you have to endure problem players' nonsense, or is it better to just walk away and find another group? I understand that for many, finding a group is a struggle, but I would argue that being trapped in the social web is also a struggle, and in my opinion, arguably a worse one. I'm glad, though, that fate seems to have smiled upon this group. The same thing happened to me, if I'm being honest, when I was in the same situation. As for Zhao's behavior itself, yeah, that's not good. Especially in RP-heavy games, you need to keep consequences in mind, and keep the rest of the group in mind, because often consequences don't just lie at your feet. It's the whole group that needs to deal with it, and it's just a drag on everything, not just the players, but also the dungeon master who has to work the story around your crap. Look, I like it when players make out-of-the-box decisions, but if those decisions make the game a burden for everybody else, I think they're better off staying in the box. I started playing in the first ever D&D campaign I've ever completed a little over a year ago now, and it's gone on to become a trilogy of campaigns with the same group, myself, 2 other players, and the Dungeon Master. However, at the start of the first campaign, there was one other player, Richard, who was just quite odd in his decision making. Richard was one of the 2 players who were new to Dungeons & Dragons. He played a wood elven druid who he described as stoic and a lone wolf type. Alright, the loner archetype sometimes worries me when it comes to D&D groups, but whatever, I was interested in hearing more about his character and how he'd play. My interest in his character immediately dropped when we began playing. My worries about the loner trope were instantly reinforced when Richard readily played his standoffish and uninvested character, barely interacting and using role-playing solely as a tool to describe his character being cool and solitary, while the rest of the party was trying to contribute and move the story along. Then he realized he had wild shape. He realized a fundamental part of his class kit.
Hey, fighter, you coming? Hey, wait up, I'm gonna... Whoa! This comes out? I didn't know you could use your sword. You're a fighter. That's like your main thing. How did you expect to kill any enemies? I was going to use spell casting to fight everything. But now that I know I can use this is so much better. Wow! That's crazy. Oh my god,
I knew I
he
shouldn't have
goes
joined
back
an LFG group.
inside.
Because of this, he started spending almost all of his time in wild shape. This wasn't for character reasons, nor was it strategic. It was just because he found it funny, I guess. It was entirely out of place, though. He'd spend opportunities for story progression interactions instead as a moose, describing moose noises and interrupting conversations to say moose. And when given the chance to speak or interact, he couldn't talk because I'm a moose. His words. Even when our Dungeon Master gave him the opportunity to play along by making an important NPC able to understand and communicate with beach speech, justified by the NPC's lycanthropy, he ended up just actually making moose noises for conversation instead of talking with, words. Additionally, there was combat. Now, I get that there are specific moves that are useful in Dungeons & Dragons and oftentimes end up being used repeatedly, but the only words he spoke during combat were ice knife. It starts getting too repetitive. And that's exactly what he did. There was absolutely no creativity to his combat. Everything was ice knife. This and the way he played out of combat, along with missing many sessions, rarely paying attention, there was almost always a fighting game in the background of our sessions, as was visible by his Steam connection to Discord, and by him literally streaming gameplay in the same call we were having our sessions on, and constantly interrupting the Dungeon Master and in-character conversations with random memes, singing, making noises, commenting on the game he was playing. It just made him seem wholly uninterested with anything going on, despite the many attempts from our dungeon master to let him have character moments or contribute in some meaningful way. This culminated in him leaving the campaign after a handful of sessions, but not without first having the audacity to say that the reason was that he wasn't given any opportunities to do things, which was blatantly untrue and just a matter of him never using those opportunities to actually do things. He also cited a reason for leaving as being that he didn't ever get turns to do things in combat, which was also untrue. He did roll low initiative checks relatively often, but still, we all cycled through our turns. His combat turns probably seem comparatively short, but that's because all he ever did with his turn was cast Ice Knife and call it a day. Needless to say, the situation was laughable, and him leaving wasn't really consequential to the campaign. This saga has gone to be something I really enjoy. Richie just made it a bit of a bumpy start. Yeah, that sounds rough. Look, D&D is a game that sometimes requires a lot of investment, especially in roleplay heavy campaigns. But I would argue somebody being this disruptive in any sort of group activity would be extremely annoying. I mean, seriously, the audacity to stream, Mortal Kombat 11 into the chat while you're trying to play is just unbelievable to me. I mean, getting interrupted by stupid memes is one thing. Every once in a while, sure, whatever. But this often, God, it would make me contemplate murder. People who equate being hated to being funny are the biggest losers on the planet. I don't really know how else to say that. This guy comes off as somebody who's just too cool to pay attention during the game, but at the same time, isn't cool enough to just, I don't know, walk away and do something else with their life. In the end, them and their ice knife tactics belong in the void, which is where they ended up going, and you had a good campaign because of it. Good on ya. A more tame episode this time around. I guess I'm just saving you from the horrors of this past Monday. Hey, by the way, how do you think that combat's going?
Oh my god, we've only killed one of them? Look, at this rate, this combat's gonna turn out to be like 6 hours! Don't you think that's a little bit excessive? Excessive? I balanced this perfect. Okay, it will only be like a 3-hour combat at most. My children are crying out for me! Forsake your children. My wife is threatening to divorce me! God!
Poor chaps are going to be done in 5.5 hours. But hey, if you guys enjoyed, then please do leave a like. If you guys want to see more of our content, then you can check out our Tavern adjacent podcast where we talk all things TTRPGs while also interviewing some creators. It's linked in the cards. And while you're there, subscribe to Crispy's Tavern to get more of our content right as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down into the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment "You're not cool" to let me know you made it to the end of the video. Hey, by the way, if you have your own horror stories, you can send them directly to us. There's an email in the description down below. Send them our way for a chance to be featured in one of these videos. But hey, even if you don't have any stories, in essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.